Yeah, I mean, I think I communicate mostly with probably like NECA and player leadership more than anything, and I try to do the best I can, you know. I always want to be respectful of everybody and treat everybody with kindness. Like, I think that's really important, but at the same time, relationships are really important to me, and I think we can always improve in that area. I think that can improve a lot of things. I think communication can improve overall. Me and Adam have a great relationship. I know he was here tonight supporting us, so that was great to see. And you know, I think we can just probably continue to improve in that area. And like I said, like communication and relationships solve a lot of issues and a lot of problems.
The boos started the second her name got called. Team Spoon had just beaten Team Coop 129-122 in one of the most entertaining all-star games this league has ever put on. Caitlin Clark had just torched the scoreboard, and the arena was still buzzing when the PA announcer introduced Kathy Engelbert to come out and hand over the post-game trophy. That's usually a formality. A commissioner walks out, smiles, hands over some hardware, everybody claps, and the broadcast moves on. Instead, the moment her name hit the speakers, the building turned on her before she even got the trophy in her hands.
So Kathy is probably done. She is probably done as commissioner. It says here, Kathy Engelbert helped the WNBA capitalize on growth, but now her relationship with players is holding it back. Obviously, they're talking a little bit about all this other stuff. And yeah, so a lot of insiders are saying this is Kathy Engelbert's last year. And it's so funny. People are like, oh yeah, she hasn't made any effort to prioritize a relationship with Caitlin Clark as one of like the negative things. And people are like, oh, they're just going to sign a new...
It wasn't scattered heckling from one section either. It was loud enough and sustained enough that broadcasters had to talk over it just to keep the segment moving. The same way crowds have booed her at previous All-Star events over pay disputes and CBA frustrations. And that's really the point here. This wasn't some rowdy one-off from an angry fan base having a bad night. This is now the second year in a row that Engelbert has walked into an All-Star trophy presentation and gotten booed for it. And when something repeats like that at the league's biggest annual showcase, it stops being a fluke and starts being a message.
Owners, executive team executives, like, people are calling out Kathy Engelbert, man, saying she's just not fit for the job. It is getting crazy for her. Let's listen to what, I think her name is Courtney. Let's listen to what Courtney had to say right here.
Engelbert has turned the WNBA into a mechanism for political discourse that goes off the rails instead of it being a sports engine. There is not a worse commissioner in pro sports than Kathy Engelbert. And I could go on for the entirety of this segment, but I'll give you this so we could... Yes, I know it can be a little long-winded. The Dan Patrick thing, canceling the interview, saying that her PR arm told her that it wasn't a good idea. Well, you are the commissioner of the league. You can decide to go on and face tough questions. If you want your league to be taken seriously, stand out in front of some of the discourse that's going on around your league. You've allowed Caitlin Clark to become hijacked in narratives that have nothing to do with basketball.
What made it sting even more is the timing. This happened during a weekend where Engelbert was already fielding questions about whether she'd even be back for the 2027 season. And getting booed on stage in front of every camera in the building, right as that speculation was at its loudest, is about as bad a visual as a commissioner can get. She still had to stand up there, hand over the trophy, and smile through it, all while the chants kept going. That's the scene the rest of this story builds off of.
So there was actually a report that came out today that says that the 2026 season will be Kathy's last season. Alexa Philippou said conversations with more than 20 stakeholders in and around the WNBA offer a general belief that for as much business growth as Kathy Engelbert has overseen, she's not the right person to navigate the demands of the league, the demands that the league currently faces, and what its stakeholders now need. I do think Kathy thinks, well, she's done her job. She's got us financially set up in the right way. It's the other pieces that we're talking about. Jeff Hunt, who is a specialist in crisis and reputation management, who has previously worked with the MLB, ATP, WTA, the PGA Tour, he said the hole has just gotten so deep. She's in a place now where I don't really know what she does. Others said that she had a failure to develop sufficient relationship equity. Multiple find it curious she hasn't prioritized developing a closer relationship with Caitlin Clark.
So when Engelbert stood in front of reporters at this year's All-Star Weekend in Chicago and got asked point blank whether she expects to still have this job heading into 2027, she didn't say yes. She talked about being blessed to lead the league through a period of hypergrowth. She talked about milestones and momentum and all the usual language commissioners reach for when they don't want to give a real answer. But she never once said the actual word yes, and she didn't say she'd be back. And everyone sitting in that room, every reporter with a recorder pointed at her, knew exactly what that non-answer meant, because commissioners who are staying usually just say so. This story didn't start this month, and it's worth going back to understand why the boos at Barclays weren't some random crowd having a bad day. Nafisa Collier lit the fuse last fall when she called Engelbert's governance negligent and said flat out that the WNBA had the worst leadership in the world in an interview that basically forced the league office into full damage control mode within hours. That's not a phrase that gets walked back easily. Once a player with Collier's resume and Collier's credibility inside locker rooms says something like that on camera, it doesn't just disappear into the news cycle. It sits there, gets replayed, gets quoted back at Engelbert in every press conference that follows.
Did you in fact say that, quote, players should be on their knees thanking their lucky stars for the rights deal that I got them?
There's a lot of inaccuracy out there through social media and all this reporting. And so I think what's most helpful is to focus on, I have been in touch with Nafisa. We've exchanged texts. We're talking next week. So I think, obviously, a lot of reporting, a lot of inaccuracy about what I said or what I didn't say. And I will tell you, I highly respect the players. There's a lot of emotion and passion going on right now because we're in collective bargaining. We're in the WNBA finals. And so I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened. You know, I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments. And so all I'll say is just, you know, it's obviously been a tough week. And I just think there's a lot of inaccuracy out there.
Engelbert did push back on parts of what Collier said. Specifically, she denied a claim Collier made about a conversation involving Caitlin Clark's value to the league, saying that account wasn't accurate. But denials only go so far when the accusation is this specific and this public. And that's the backdrop Caitlin Clark's own comments landed on this year. She hasn't been screaming at Engelbert on camera. She hasn't thrown her under the bus in a press conference the way Collier did. That's just not really her style, and it never has been. But she's also stopped pretending everything inside league leadership is fine. And this year, for the first time in her career, she's said the quiet part slightly less quietly than before.
Engelbert, this is your final year. Adam Silver getting ready to fire her come year's end. This Alyssa Thomas, Caitlin Clark situation appears to be the straw that broke the camel's back. We are getting leaked information, and it's coincidence, right? Kathy Engelbert not only makes the WNBA look bad by not showing up to the Dan Patrick interview, the WNBA being under the umbrella of the NBA, in turn, you're making the NBA look bad as well. You're making Adam Silver look bad as well. You're making it seem like Adam Silver doesn't know how to pick the correct leadership when it comes to who's leading the WNBA.
Go back to the Alyssa Thomas incident for a second, because it explains a lot about why trust between Clark and Engelbert has eroded the way it has. Thomas caught Clark with a fist to the throat during a game, the kind of play that gets replayed instantly and doesn't need much explanation once you see it. Sources told Sports Business Journal that Engelbert wasn't originally planning to discipline Thomas for it at all, until Adam Silver personally stepped in and pushed her to reverse course. Engelbert eventually suspended Thomas for 1 game, and hit her with a flagrant foul penalty and a fine. But that only happened after Silver got involved behind the scenes. The WNBA pushed back publicly on that account, calling it false that Engelbert hadn't planned to act on her own. But regardless of whose version you believe, the story got out. It spread everywhere. And the fact that a suspension only materialized once the NBA commissioner leaned on her is exactly the kind of detail that makes players start asking a very uncomfortable question. Who's actually protecting their most marketable star when it matters? And if the answer isn't the WNBA's own commissioner, that's a problem that doesn't just fade with a good quarter of ratings.
I think that ultimately the issues around Caitlin Clark are not largely about officiating, and that particular incident is not about whether a foul should have been called at the time in the game or whether that was ultimately a flagrant on review. And I've come to know Caitlin really well. She's an incredible player and also an incredible person. And she wants to focus on being the player she can. And she's become a bit of a political football in this country. And I think it's incredibly unfair to her. I don't think that issue is ultimately about officiating. It's sort of, it's become political ping pong with her. And she's a young woman who's trying to improve her game, focus on being the best player as she can. And I don't even think it's fair to her that this has become...
Silver didn't stay quiet about any of this after the fact either. Asked directly about the Thomas situation, he said Clark had become a bit of a political football in this country and called the way she'd been treated incredibly unfair. He was careful with his words, adding that he didn't think it was fair to Clark or to Engelbert to turn one flagrant foul into a bigger storyline than it needed to be. But when the head of an entirely different league starts publicly defending your player in your league on a topic that isn't technically his to comment on, that tells you something real about how much Silver actually cares about getting this right. He didn't have to say anything. He chose to. That's not new behavior for him either, and it's worth pointing out this has been building for a while. It sounded like a direct read on Engelbert's leadership without him actually saying her name out loud. Reports at the time suggested Silver was quietly trying to smooth things over with Engelbert behind closed doors, while still applying public pressure whenever a moment called for it. That's a pattern. Public restraint, private pressure, and occasional public statements when things get bad enough that silence isn't an option anymore.
According to Tom Friend of the Sports Business Journal, Kathy Engelbert reportedly thought a suspension was too steep because a foul wasn't called live. But reportedly, Adam Silver saw clear evidence of a flagrant foul and urged Kathy Engelbert to act immediately. Now, the WNBA denies this account, but here's the part where the history matters in all of this. During Game 4 of the 2016 Finals, Draymond and LeBron James got tangled up on the floor. No flagrant foul was called live, but Adam Silver and the NBA reviewed it afterwards, assessing Draymond Green at flagrant foul 1, his fourth point, suspending him for Game 5 of the Finals. Now look at Alyssa Thomas. No call was called live. No flagrant foul was called live. But then after the game, elevated to a flagrant foul penalty to a suspension as well as a $1,000 fine. Different league, different player, but striking similar process. But here's where things get even more interesting. According to this report, those closest to Kathy Engelbert believe that she was in an unenviable situation where she didn't want to show favoritism to Caitlin Clark and also didn't want to overlook the fact that players felt overshadowed by Caitlin Clark, which is where reportedly her hesitation came from. But Adam Silver reportedly also felt bad.
And then you've got moments like his appearance during an Indiana Pacers broadcast, where he talked at length about the popularity of Caitlin Clark and the fever exploding globally, mentioning ticket sales and jersey numbers and international interest, and didn't mention a single other WNBA player by name the entire time. That's the kind of clip that gets cut up and replayed 100 times across social media, because it says a lot without technically saying much at all. Silver knows exactly what Clark means for basketball as a business right now, across both leagues, and he's never really hidden that fact or tried to soften it for anyone's comfort.
We treat everybody with kindness. I think that's really important, but at the same time, relationships are really important to me, and I think we can always improve in that area. I think that can improve a lot of things. I think communication can improve overall. Me and Adam have a great relationship. I know he was here tonight supporting us, so that was great to see, and I think we can just probably continue to improve in that area. And like I said, communication and relationships solve a lot of issues and a lot of problems. And
so here's where this month's story actually breaks open into something bigger than background noise. After leading Team Spoon to a 129-122 win over Paige Beckers and Team Coop at the 2026 All-Star Game, a game that's already being talked about as one of the most entertaining in league history, Clark got asked in the post-game press conference whether her relationship with league leadership had gotten better since the new CBA went into effect. She kept going from there, saying communication and relationships solve a lot of issues, and that there's still room to keep improving across the board. That's Clark, in her own words, on the record, publicly putting Silver in a good light while she was standing in the exact same building where Engelbert's leadership had been questioned all weekend long by reporters, by fans, and reportedly by team executives behind closed doors.
At the same time, the WNBA has so much to be proud of, and I feel like, we're always so focused on the negative when we can be focused on the positive. And WNBA leadership has created a lot of positives for this league too, and that should be celebrated. And Kathy has also brought a lot to this league and helped us reach new milestones. But there's always room for improvement in everywhere of a business. And I think we can, just go back and reflect and find ways to get better. And but overall, I think relationships and communication is really good.
And notice what Clark didn't do in that moment, because it says just as much as what she did say. She didn't trash Engelbert outright. She actually gave Engelbert some credit too, saying the league has a lot to be proud of, and that Kathy has brought a lot to this league and helped us reach new milestones, while adding there's always room for improvement. That's a carefully worded answer, and anyone who's watched Clark handle media for the past few years knows she doesn't say things by accident. It's not a full takedown of Engelbert, but it's also clearly not a full endorsement either. And putting Silver's name front and center in that same breath, right as speculation about Engelbert's future is at its loudest point all year, doesn't feel like something Clark stumbled into by chance.
Probably will be. It probably will be Kathy's last season, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, and we also talked about this during the whole CBA thing. It was a disaster. And Kathy has done a lot of incredible things for the WNBA and a lot of things that I personally have heard that have gone on behind the scenes that we actually don't see publicly. She's done a lot to make sure that this league stays afloat. But again, it seems like it's more from the business side and not so much the relationships that she builds with players. And there have constantly been more and more players coming out and saying that they don't have a relationship with her and she's not doing great and things need to be better. And I do think that there has been just so many fires across the WNBA that haven't been put out quickly enough. The PR hasn't been great. The marketing hasn't been great.
Silver himself has stayed pretty guarded whenever he's asked directly whether Engelbert stays past this year. Back in March, right after the new CBA got finalized, reporters asked him flat out if she'd continue in the role, and he wouldn't confirm it, saying only that there hadn't been recent discussions about her future plans. That's about as close as a sitting commissioner gets to saying, "We'll see," without actually forming those words. This month, at NBA Summer League, he was asked again about her performance and gave a version of the same careful answer, saying he's very pleased with where the WNBA is, while noticeably not speaking directly for her or committing to her staying. But structurally, the WNBA board answers to the NBA in a real sense, since Silver was the one who appointed Engelbert to the role in the first place back when she got hired. If he's the person deciding who eventually replaces her, or at least heavily influencing that decision behind the scenes the way commissioners of this stature usually do, players like Clark clearly see him as someone who actually understands what this league needs going forward. Whether he ends up in that chair himself or simply picks whoever does, his fingerprints are already all over this succession conversation, whether the league office wants to admit that publicly or not.
She's been terrible. One of her number one problems is not publicly heading trouble off at the pass. And I'm talking about having a press conference, getting in front of people, and taking the bullets. She refuses to do it. Remember, she's literally at the same golf tournament where Dan Patrick is hosting his show, and she backed out. She ghosted him on an interview that went mega viral after she did it because Dan Patrick drowned her and then so did everybody else. She refused to take responsibility.
Fans have picked up on all of this fast, and honestly, faster than the league office has managed to respond to any of it. Since the All-Star Weekend reporting dropped, timelines have been flooded with clips pairing Clark's comments about Silver directly against footage of Engelbert getting booed at Barclays last year, basically writing the succession story themselves before the league has said a single official word about any of it. ESPN reported that Engelbert stayed deliberately vague when asked about her own job status this weekend, repeating lines about being blessed to lead the league through hypergrowth rather than giving anyone in that room a straight answer. And Clark, without raising her voice once, without throwing a single direct insult at anybody, has managed to make it pretty clear who she trusts and who she's simply tolerating for now while the business side sorts itself out. Whether Silver ends up with any formal role in picking the next commissioner remains to be seen, and the league hasn't announced anything close to a timeline. But if this month proved anything at all, it's that Kathy Engelbert's grip on this job is loosening fast, and Caitlin Clark isn't exactly rushing over to hold the door open for her on the way out.